Hey, somebody's got to pick the rest of the grapefruit. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today, and with every show we do, is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. Hey, have you joined wisdomharbor.com yet? That's wisdom, HARBOUR.com. Our sponsor this week is wisdomharbor.com. And for less than $3 a month, you'll have access to original content only found on wisdomharbor.com. You can get a year's subscription that is much less than $3 a month. But this is perfect for your family, and that includes your little kids, your teenagers, and your adult children. Dave Ramsey says it's also perfect for your business and teams. He utilizes video, audio, and the written word. Content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, master chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of wisdomharbor.com. That's wisdom, HARBOUR.com. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the peace table with both. And we have a special treat today. We have, I'm a story person. I love stories. And true stories are the best kind of stories. True stories that have different elements of danger, of truth, of searching. Those kind of stories are the best to me. And our guest today has that in huge amounts. He is Doru Stefanescu, and you will hear his story. He is a metallurgical how do you say this? Metallurgical engineer. And I'm already kind of intimidated because I looked you up on Google, and I was looking at the things that have been published by you in this, and I was like scrolling. You have done a lot. Please welcome Doru Stefanescu. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting. It's a pleasure.
Now, you have a unique perspective on a lot of world events. And I want to get into the world events that we're going through right now. But I would really love to hear your background. You are Romanian.
Correct.
And I think it was in the 60s that Nicolae Ceausescu...
I was born in 42.
You were born in 42.
So Ceausescu was killed in 1990.
Right.
But I defected in 1980.
Right.
So I was 38 years old when I came to America.
How, 38?
38.
Okay, so Ceausescu, if you're not up on your world history, this was a guy like Hitler, like Stalin. Ceausescu presided over a genocide of his own people, killing tens of thousands of his own people. And so, Doru, you escaped. I mean, you didn't just defect. Yes. You didn't just like show up somewhere and say, "Hey, I'd like to defect." I mean, you escaped.
Yes.
And so, can you tell me that story?
Well, so I have to discuss a little bit of the background so we can understand.
Please.
At that time, if you wanted to travel out of Romania, we didn't have passports. The passport was with the state, so I traveled for business a couple of times, and then they would give me the passport. And I had to have a Romanian exit visa for the country which I was supposed to visit. And then, of course, an entry visa. So the problem was that to get a visa from a different country was not possible from Romania. That will tell them where you want to go, right? And Romania was part of the Warsaw Pact, and there was an agreement between all these countries that they will not let you out of their country. So if I'll go, for example, to visit Hungary, that's the only country I could go. I could not go out of Hungary. The Hungarian authority will not let me do that. So the only window here was Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was a communist country ruled by another dictator, Tito, but Yugoslavia was playing, smiling with both sides of the mouth. And so that was a lot of work that I had to do for information. That's another story in itself. It will take probably more time than you have to listen to all that. But I did have this information that from Yugoslavia, there are days where I could exit without being asked for an exit visa. And so here was my plan then. I'm going to get a Romanian visa to go to Yugoslavia as a tourist. And then in Yugoslavia, I'm going to go to the American embassy. And I had a letter of invitation from the American Foundryman Society to come and give a talk. That unknown to the Romanian authorities. So I had that letter with me, which I can produce and show to the consul, and this is going to be my reason to visit the United States. And so I then had an agreement with a guy from Yugoslavia who was doing business, shady business across the border. And he will buy me the tickets to go to America, and my father will pay him in Romanian currency. So he could buy goods from Romania. And so I got in the train with my wife. She was pregnant in her 6 months at that time. And we arrived in Belgrade, and he was trying to show me the town. That's the first time, it's 1980s, that's the first time I've seen a color TV until that point. And she was trying to show me the town, and my mind was not to be a tourist there. I was still wondering what's going to happen if I go to, how is the consul going to react to all that?
Now, you and your wife had left a child with your parents.
Yes, I had one daughter that was 1.5 years old, so I have to leave her behind with my parents, who were the only people that knew that I'm leaving. Not even my wife's father or sister knew about that, because that was so important that there will be no... and that took about 6 months just planning this. And so here I am, I go to the American embassy and I show my letter, and the ambassador, the consul looks on the letter and says, well, but this conference that you're talking about here, this is in April, and this is January. What are you going to do in the meantime? Well, I said, well, look around, see the country, And then he asked me a question, and that's when I think God came into my life and said, I'll give you a little bit of help here. Because what happened, he asked me, are you planning to stay in the United States? No, I had no idea what the laws were here, but I knew that was typical that in Europe, if you managed to escape to a country, you could claim asylum. Only later I learned that in the United States, you can't do that. You have to ask for asylum outside of the country. For example, one of my friends that did a similar thing, he ended up in a camp in Italy. And they processed his application, took a few months in Italy until I did not know that. But my intent was not really to come to America. I was not going someplace. I was going out of someplace. I speak good English. That was my first language, and I know very well French literature and history on that. And I was really trying to go to France, but I have no way to go to France from Yugoslavia, And And rather than saying, yes, I like to stay in America, I say, no, that's not my plan. And so he said, okay, come back at 2 o'clock. That was 11. And I went at 2 o'clock, and the stamp was there, and I had my visa.
Wow.
And now the interesting thing, you go to the airport. So typically, when you are in a communist country, at that time, they will look for the visa. Do you have a visa to go to, a Romanian visa to go to America? Exit visa. No, my exit visa was for Yugoslavia. But this is where my information worked well, because what the Yugoslavians are doing, that they're, for example, a week or 2 weeks, they'll let everybody go through. And I can tell you another story. It was one of my friends that I helped come to America later. But, and then the next week, they'll turn you back to Romania. So it was very important to know when. And that was my connection, Yugoslavian guys that had the information say, this week, you are good. And when I presented my passport to the border control, the guy looked at it. It was a Romanian passport. He handed back to me. I have no exit visa from Yugoslavia on my passport. They've never seen me from their standpoint. We don't know how he got there.
Wow.
And then I flew into New York, and then I applied for a visa, for a permanent visa. And that's another story. That's not easy granted. Now you don't need a visa. You just get over the border and disappear. But at my time...
It works from the South.
From the South, yes.
Yeah.
From the South, at least, yes. But at my time, the visa was a serious thing to get a visa. And so I got a job at the University of Wisconsin as a visiting professor in 2 weeks. That's because of both the professors there and another CEO of an American company have read my papers, and they're interested.
Wow.
And then I've been as a visiting professor with the University of Wisconsin for 6 months, and then I got my position at Alabama as an associate professor and retired after 25 years of service from the University of Alabama.
So you meant to go to France. You were expecting croissants, and you ended up in Alabama with eating hamburgers. Biscuits. Yeah.
And turnip greens.
Yeah, and turnip greens. So how did you and your wife get your baby?
Well, so once we were in Alabama, we had a private counselor that helped us through the steps. His name is Dick Nunley. He is now deceased. And he made the applications. Well, we had to deal first with the Romanian government. The Romanian government's first, you have to give up Romanian citizenship. My wife and I. Was
there any punishment? Did they come down on your parents? Was there penalty for escaping? What?
They couldn't. My dad was retired. They could do nothing. I had a car, and I had an apartment. And 2 days before leaving, I sold them to my dad, in principle.
Right.
So the secret police came. The CIA, not the CIA, the Romanian KGB came and wanted the car. I said, well, why do you want to take the car? Well, it's your son's car. No, it's mine. Here's the paperwork. And the apartment, it's mine. And they let it be. My parents had nothing to suffer, no. But the punishment for an illegal attempt to cross the border was 3 years in jail. That was simple. That was a law. And it's not only that, your life would have been ruined. I was an engineer. I could never work again as an engineer if I would have failed. So failure was not an option. Okay.
So how did it come about that you got your daughter back?
All right. So then I had to give up Romanian citizenship, which I did. So now I have no citizenship at all. And then Congressman Shelby at that time, he wrote to the Romanian embassy and asked, this is a minor child and all that. And then the Romanian embassy says that cannot be done unless he has legal status. I was illegal.
So they had.
I wasn't illegal here because I have applied for asylum, but I had no status.
Right.
And
so they had you in a catch-22.
Right.
Because they made you no longer a Romanian citizen, and yet to get your child out, you had to be a Romanian citizen.
Well, you had to be something. You say, well, what you are? You are nothing. You don't exist, right? You are not American. You are not Romanian. You're okay. And so then the battle for me to get my permanent residency started. And here, like in all things in life, it depends on the kind of people you run into. And I had good people and not so good people.
Richard Shelby was a good one.
Richard was a good one, and the university was a good one. I need to remember the name of the vice president. But
It was Bear Bryant.
But I met Bear Bryant. I shook his hand in a pub there. I met him. Yes. I had to get the support of the university, but things happened this way. I had an application for permanent residency. I received a letter from immigration that says that my request is denied, mostly because I changed places so much, and in principle, I was trying to avoid immigration, which is incorrect because every time I moved, because I moved 3 times in this interval, every time I moved, I told immigration what it was. And then I was sitting with that letter in my hand, and I didn't have the courage to tell my wife what that means, because I don't know what will happen from here. And I was in my office at the university.
So they were telling you couldn't get your child back.
I cannot get permanent residency,
Okay.
which would make me illegal. Well, and I would have to appear in court, okay, to argue this. And they said they had a date for the court, which was in Atlanta. And so I was sitting here and I said, what am I doing with myself now? And the telephone rings, and it was another vice president of the university. So a technical guy with whom I'm working. His name is Wells. I remember that one. And he said, Doru, how is your immigration going? Your immigration status? Well, Bob, I said, not good. What happened? Well, then let me read you this letter. So I read him this letter. Okay, I'll call you in a while. All right. So he calls me about 2 hours later and say, Doru, here is the situation. The university will support you on that. We are going to hire a lawyer for you, one lawyer in Atlanta that we know he is good. And we are going to have the vice president, the other vice president, to come and be your witness. And so I called this guy, the lawyer in Atlanta. He was a Jewish guy who escaped from Rhodesia. I don't know if you remember at that time when, I don't remember the name of the Rhodesian dictator that took over and he started killing the white people and sending them all over the back, and so a lot of Jews coming to America.
Right.
So he was very sympathetic because we were boat people, And so he said, well, tell me your story. No, so I said, okay, so I read the everything. He got the files. I read everything else, and she said, I think you have a good chance to get, but I can promise you, because it's going to depend on 1 or 2 people. It will depend on the judge, and the judge is a human being. But why don't you come and let's talk before that? Come to Atlanta. And that I was amazed. I went there and he took me for lunch. It was a big tower building and their offices were at some level and the cafeteria or restaurant at a level. The lunch was, hey, really high class. So I say, well, at least I get a good lunch from this. So then we started talking, and he asked me the same questions that he asked me the first time. And I gave him the same answers, And he said, Doru, we're going to win that. I said, wait a second. You asked me the same questions, and I gave you the same answers. And the first time when I talked over the phone, answered over the phone, you said, well, I think you have a good chance, and I think it may work, but I'm not sure. And now you seem so sure. Oh, it's simple, Doru. You convince me, and you are going to convince the judge. That's what he said. Psychology of a lawyer. Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the day of the trial came, and we had the attorney from the immigration who listed all the reasons that I should not be granted permanent residency. The main one being that I have not applied correctly. I didn't apply correctly. And then the president, Portera was his name. It's all here. I can't always access it, but it's there. So Dr. Portera, then he said, look, Professor Stefanescu has been with us for 2 years now or so. He is doing very well. We need him. The university wants to have him. And so the judge then went back to the lawyer, to the attorney, and say, well, look, you just said that the main reason is that the form was not done correctly. So let's see, we give him a form here, and he fills that out correctly. What are you going to do? Well, we are going to reject it. I don't know exactly what he says, because something else. The judge says, really? He took his, it's not a hammer, how do you call that?
Gavel.
The gavel. This guy is a permanent resident. Next. And I was a permanent resident. That was it.
Good for that judge.
Yeah. That's all he did. What? Bang. He's a permanent resident.
Wow.
And so now I'm a permanent resident. Hey, things are better. So we go back to the embassy, and then again, Shelby, Congressman Shelby, now Senator Shelby, went back and pumped them, and eventually they gave her a visa, and she came back. She came here, and we picked her up at the airport. And
wow.
But to this day, she remembers. It's amazing. The other daughter was born here, Carla. She's a medical doctor. She's working at UAB. And Carla, well, Romania is okay. It's interesting. But she is not much connected. But Alina, because she was born there, she is very connected. And that brings me to another little story. I'm a storyteller myself.
Please.
One of my students was the son, he was my master's student. He was the son of the pastor at the church that I was going in Tuscaloosa. So we had a relatively close relationship. And he was born in Venezuela because at the time of his birth, his dad was working in Venezuela as a pastor. He was in church there. And so I asked him, well, you're going to graduate next year, so what do you plan to do? And he said, Dr. Stefanescu, I'd like to go to Venezuela maybe for a time. Why is that? Well, I was born there, and I kind of like to do something for these people. So you see, this concept that if you are not born here, you should not be president, I think has some merit. Only if you are born here, you are, fully, because that's the only world you know. You see, as opposed to knowing also another world and having another history and another ancestry and all that.
That's very interesting.
Yes, my father was telling me a a war story, and that is that he knew somebody, I'm not sure what was the connection, that heard this story, that there were two American pilots of German origin, but born in America. And they went on a mission in Germany, came back, and called their dad and said, "Dad, today we have erased from the map of the world the village in which we were born." They're Americans. Those were Germans. So it's amazing what this thing, being born in a certain country.
That connection.
Yeah, the connection. Yeah.
So you grew up in a Warsaw Pact country.
Yes.
And at what point, how old were you when Ceausescu took over?
Well, Ceausescu took over in 1961 or 62. At that time, I graduated from college in 1960. It was 63 because by that time I had my PhD degree. And when he came to power, he said, we need to utilize the best we can our talents. And doesn't matter is there a member of the party or not, and I wasn't. Doesn't matter. We just have to use our best people. And so, in 1964, I was sent to England to be specialized. I worked at Fort Dagenham in England for 3 months. And then I came back. I had no intent of leaving. And then, I don't know when it was at, in 66, 67 or so, he had a visit in Korea, North Korea. Kim Il-sung was. And he saw this cult of personality and dictators, and he got enamored with that and came back. And from that point on, he just went down and down on this path of being a bad dictator.
When did the genocide start?
Well, I don't think he was a little bit, he didn't kill that many. He killed, but not that many.
Like 60,000.
I don't know this number, Frank.
That's what Google says. So
It does?
yeah.
Well, what he did, he had concentration camps for prisoners. For example, they would build a bridge over the Danube, okay? So there are thousands. And there is there are some major jails that now have been opened as museums with the cells, and those people were there to die. They were not killed. You see, so I don't know how these numbers are counted.
Right.
Probably if you killed those that died in these cells, probably the number is like that. But he didn't execute, simply execute, like just kill them. Somewhere, okay?
But he established work camps.
Oh,
and
yes.
how did he choose who went in the concentration camps?
Well, I'll call them jails. They're camps. He will call them working camps, but they're jails, okay? And my uncle has been in that. My grandfather have been in that. They both went to these jails, okay? For different reasons. My grandfather was a Catholic priest of Byzantine rite. So that was a special allowance made for some Catholics in Romania by the Pope, that they could keep the Orthodox right, or read right, but be Catholic, accept the Pope as the head of the church. And through that they could marry. So that's why a grandfather was, okay? He was in jail when the communists came in. He was put in jail for nothing, just because because the Catholics in Romania did not submit. The Orthodox did. The Orthodox said, okay, that's a power. Didn't Jesus say, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar? Okay. The Catholics did not. And then they went to jail. And his son, my uncle, went to jail. He was an engineer for other reasons. He was considered a saboteur. He was a mining engineer. And so, he told me the way he was tortured in jail. I can tell you. For example,
tell me.
They had two that he most remembers. One was called the statue. So they have you leaning against a wall, and they draw a semicircle at your feet, around your feet. And you stand there. And now your feet start swelling. If you step out, bang, they don't beat you unless you step out. And you do that for 10 hours, 15 hours, I don't know what the number is, and then you collapse and and the other one was locking you into a safe. It's maybe like the waterboarding, where you are marginal to this because you consume all the oxygen in the safe. And he had to go through all of this, Yeah. Well.
Do you remember where you were in America and what was going on when Ceausescu and his wife were executed?
Yes, I actually I did talk at, I don't remember the number of a channel in Tuscaloosa. I went there and made an appeal for support. I wanted to raise money to help people in Romania. And I got some money. Then I gave it to the church because it wasn't enough to do anything. So I gave it to the church and I said, okay, give it to the poor. But I have a movie with this part from the American TV when they announced what happened. And with me, one of my little hobbies was making movies. So I have all my life is in movies.
Wow.
Including when my daughter was born, I had a camera with 8 millimeters and I would develop the film myself. So yes, I was fully aware of that. And of course, it was a very, very confusing event. And then the second echelon of communists took over, because they had the power, the knowledge and everything. And it took another few years before democracy could really work. And the communists were purged from power. And so now Romania became a real democratic country and it's a member of NATO. Actually, I went with Pamela, that you know, and with some Spanish friends. I wanted to show the Romania, I wanted to show this jail. So we went to that jail. But when we returned, we went to one of the oldest hotels in Bucharest, and we were there in a room reserved for the guests. And here we have 6 American boys coming in. They were from the American troops in Romania that serve this, the name of the place is De Veselu, where they have this anti-missile defense. So that's the most advanced NATO defense line. And then there's an airport for the NATO, for American airplanes.
The anti-missile defense. Yeah.
Anti-missile and an airport for airplanes.
Right.
So there is a little echelon of... So we chatted with those guys. It was interesting to see them there. So I think times have changed, but not enough.
I'm really interested in your thoughts on what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. And it just, I mean, I know we look at it and to us, it's a world away, and yet I don't know that we've been closer to nuclear war since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, well, you know that some big Russian bomber has landed in Venezuela. Yeah, so now it's just like the Cuban crisis.
Right. So
okay, they try to establish a foot there.
Yeah. So just give me your analysis of this, especially knowing world history like you do. I mean, I look at this and I'm thinking, isn't this is what Hitler did? Everybody watched him mass troops on the border, and everybody said, no, he's just, no. And then he goes and he says, no, I'm fine. And there's just basically one. There's Churchill is the only guy yelling,
yes,
watch him.
Yeah.
And everybody's just denying.
I think it's the same thing. And you can see how late our reaction was in imposing sanctions. Right? They'll take. They say, well, it'll take a month for them to happen. Then you should have imposed them a month earlier, right? So it's the same thing. People that live in country where they are happy or happy enough, they don't want war. Who wants war? And they don't realize that sometimes in history, what happens has nothing to do with what you want or what you would like to, or with your idealists. No, people are not doing that. They are, and they will. And here, is it a Russian war or is the Putin war? Well, you can say it's a Putin war. I have a discussion on that with one of my daughters. She said, it's the Russians. Well, the Russians are people. They're like us. It's a nation that I respect because it has given us great writers, great painters, great musicians, great poets, great scientists. And yet it's a nation that has lived under the thumb of a dictator of one way or the other, and then they become somebody else. Just like the Germans. You take them one by one, and they are nice. And they get together, and they do what Hitler does. And you see, you don't have to have all of them. You don't have to have a majority of them. You have to have some, because you get a pyramid,
right?
And if you have a few layers on the top, the rest, some of them don't know, some of them are scared, some of them don't have the means, and so the top of the pyramid is going to tell the rest of the guys how they are going to sink.
Yeah. Nazi Germany had 79.9 million in population, and never at any time during that conflict did the Nazi Party have more than 8.5 million members.
Oh, certainly. And it's the same with Russia. I have no doubts. I mean, there is no Communist Party now, right? So I would put the number, I make them, 80% of the Russians don't want it. Okay? And you see resistance in Russia, quite laudable. I mean, but it's not enough because you have the apparatchik that is well oiled,
right?
Developed under Stalin and has continuity since then with different names. KGB, FSB, it's the same thing. French says, la même Jeannette, différemment coiffée. The same Janet with a different hairdo. Yes, so I think I'm very concerned. I think the Ukrainians are admirable. All respect for them. I don't see a positive outcome because I think Putin cannot accept to lose for pride, but also because if he loses, there will be the second echelon that is going to take him down.
Yeah, I mean, if he loses, he will die.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. People say, will he really do something drastic? Yeah.
I think he'll do anything he can, unless he can get exactly what he wants, so he can go back and say, okay, this is what we wanted, and we got it.
Right.
Which is what? Which is not only that Ukraine should not be part of NATO, but also that Ukraine should disarm. Okay, so now you want them disarmed, and then you walk in, right? And it's finished. I mean, and so that's going to be very, very difficult for Zelensky to accept. Maybe he will accept not to be part of, to be a neutral country. But disarm? I don't know.
Yeah, it's it seems to be the first move of a bully, or the first wish of a bully, to disarm.
Yeah, well, that's what Germany did, right? They first took Austria because they speak the same language. They are brothers. Did you hear Putin saying they're brothers? They are the same people.
Right.
The German took the Austria. Yeah? Then we have the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, where they divided Poland. Germany took half, Russia took half. And that's when they took part of Romania, Moldavia.
Right.
Okay? And Moldavia is a target because they have some Russian population, maybe 5-10%. And then the Baltic states, they have 15-20% Russian population. Estonia and Estonia, I don't know about Lithuania, but okay. And so that's a normal process for them. And you know, we've seen that on TV. Actually, President Biden himself said that the goal of Putin is to reestablish the Soviet Union, the Soviet Empire.
Well, that's what Hitler did. He said, he said, we're taking Austria. They are us. This is Sudetenland. This is us.
They speak the same language, don't they? Yeah. Yes. So we see the same thing, except Putin doesn't have the power, economic power, that Hitler has.
Right.
Because Germany was a powerhouse then, as it is today. Under Hitler, it was a powerhouse, and Russia is not a powerhouse economically. Yes, they have nuclear weapons, but I don't think a nuclear war can happen because they know they can't win. We cannot win either. I don't know who's going to win, but nobody can win a nuclear war because they all, when they start bombing, they bomb one another. And
okay, let me play devil's advocate here. What you just said, that you don't think that we'll have a nuclear war because nobody can win. That is the declaration of a rational person. You are very rational. And so I agree, nobody can win. Okay, I'm just not sure Putin is rational.
He probably is not, but if you look at what he did in the past, I think that was a miscalculation, this invasion of Ukraine. But what he did in the past, he was very rational in everything he did, and he always won. Look at Georgia, look at Crimea. He won because he calculated well, and the West did nothing.
Did nothing.
Okay, so he then cannot be oblivious to this idea that nobody can win.
Yeah.
And so he may be foolish enough to say, I'm going to die anyway, so why don't I have a great company when I die? Okay? But maybe it's a human in me that doesn't want to accept that this can happen.
Right.
And if it's a conventional war, they cannot win against us. No way. And so, but that takes the power of somebody to say, we'll fight you. And President Biden made, to me, an unacceptable mistake when he said, we are not going to have NATO engaging Russia. Not that I will say that we should, but I say we should have never told that. Right. Let them worry about it.
Right.
That's a possibility. Why take it off the table?
Why take it off the table?
Let it be. Let him worry about that. Let's negotiate that. Okay? I don't know. So I'm not a military strategist. I'm a simple individual, retired, enjoying my sailing and Ono Island. And I just look at history,
I think that your education, your experience, and your thought process has made you a very wise man.
Well, age makes you a wise man.
No, age just makes you older.
Well, that's what I don't want to accept, that I'm old.
You know what?
My wife said, never say you're old. Okay. Yeah.
You know, I'm connecting a couple of things that you mentioned. One, you said that Russia is not a power economically. And you also said in a conventional war, they cannot beat us. And that just made me think. I spent a number of years working with the military and working with special operations, and especially working with some Air Force stuff. And I never will forget one of the things that General Fogelsong, he was the USAFE commander, the 4-star guy, head of Europe, the Balkans, Middle East, and he told me one time, he said, when our guys, our pilots, our fighter pilots go up against their fighter pilots, he said, we will win. And he said, the reason we will win is based on the economy. He said, because they have enough money to let their guys fly 3 days a week, and we have enough money to fly our guys 6 days a week.
So, right. I want to tell you about my military training. You know, it was mandatory. So I am, or was, they kicked me out of the army. I was a lieutenant, platoon commander, tank platoon commander. And during my military service, because I was in college, that was a day a week, and then during the summer months, and then 6 months at the end. So we didn't do the complete 2 years that a normal conscript does. And so during my training, we had a pistol, a revolver. That was the weapon of the officer. No bullets. And in all my training as a platoon commander and an officer, I shoot 3 bullets. 3.
Wow.
That was all the training. Okay? And so what you are saying, yes, absolutely.
You know, they told me then the Balkans conflict had kind of ramped down, and I forget how many thousands of sorties our jets flew in the Balkans against their jets and against the ground fire and everything. Do you know how many fighters we lost? 2.
Well,
2.
Yeah.
In all that time, thousands of sorties. And so that...
I think also the technologies that we have is superior. So, but there is one point to make here. I think this is a war, and we are wrong if we don't think we are not in this war. We are.
We are already in this war.
Because there are consequences, and there will be more and more and more. And so we should, if we are in a war and we want to win, we should accept that we have to make some sacrifices. And here is what I'm talking about. the simplest way to win this war right now, and that it's not me that I'm saying, I read that, and I say that's a good idea. So I'm repeating what other guys more in the field. Choke the Russian pipe. No petroleum, no gas from Russia. Never, not for us, not for anybody. That will end it. They can survive because that's all they get the money. But we are still having 15% of our oil coming from Russia as of today.
Right. Yeah, 500,000 barrels a day.
Yeah. Why are we doing that? Why can't we say, choke it? Yes. And then what? And then we are told, oh, we are going to open the strategic reserve. I read they are going to last for 2.5 days as a current demand.
Right.
So what? That's a patch on a wooden leg.
That's exactly right.
Right? So why not address, because we have this environmental concern? How about all these bombs that are exploding there and all the CO2 and all this produced by that? Shouldn't we stop that first? Shouldn't we stop the war first and then be concerned about the environment? In Romania, they say, why do you put the cart ahead of the
right? Well,
the horse?
It's a 50-pound tail wagging a 5-pound dog. You know,
Yes.
And there are those who say, why are people not willing to go through something? I wonder myself, are Americans willing to suffer a little discomfort? I mean, we're all concerned about the gas prices, but my gosh, if you look at the price of gas, people are freaking out over the price of gas, and yet we pay more for for bottled water. We pay more for bottled water than we do for a gallon of gas.
Yes. Well, and I think that one of the issues here is communications with the American public, because if you ask your average American, are you willing to sacrifice for a year or so and maybe pay 3 times for the gas and then less time for you to enjoy a car? But this will win a war where people will stop dying, mothers will not cry for their children in Ukraine, and there will be no fear that this will expand, will be a domino effect like happened during Hitler. I think the American public would say, yes, maybe we should do that. But I think we agree that we live in an era where it's very hard to get correct information. The media is not doing their job in providing the correct information. And so people don't know what to believe. We each have our own truth. There is no universal truth anymore. And so people are saying, well, why should I pay more for gas? You know, I mean, they don't see the outcome. They don't see the big picture. And they don't see how what we do today affects our children.
And see, I think that is the essence of an argument that would resonate with people. I was on a phone call not too long ago, and I had a lady that told me that nobody agrees about anything anymore, that we are an absolutely split country, that nobody agrees. And I said, well, I think there are some things we agree on, and there better be, because we are definitely living in a country that has a leadership vacuum. And I'm not saying that there's a vacuum of people who want to be, lead. I'm saying there's a vacuum of people who understand leadership at that level, because the essence of leadership is influence, and the essence of influence is agreement, not disagreement. You don't follow somebody that you disagree with. You're not influenced by somebody that you just disagree with everything with. And so you have to find something to agree with. And when I said that, she said, well, there's nothing we agree on anymore. And I I think you just hit on what we do agree on, because I don't care who you ask. I don't care how old they are, what color they are. I think that if you ask people, do you want the best for your children? I think their honest answer is yes. But then we have to figure out, okay, but are we really willing to search for the best? Because the best, whatever that best is, that's one thing. That is a mark, the best. We're not talking about among the best or some of the best or the best of the decade. This is the best. There can be different categories, but in each category, there's only one best. And so are you willing to honestly search? Are you willing to be wrong about some of the things that you think? Now, I'm willing to be wrong about some of the things I think if the outcome is the best for my children or my grandchildren.
You don't have to have everything you want, but
right.
Let's have some things that unite us and move it on. And I was thinking that we have all this division because people are concentrating on one issue. There is a abortion issue, the global warming issue, whatever one issue there is, and we can get together on anything. And following what you said, then why don't we make this one issue our children and their future? And we agree with that. And now we go through subsets of things that we can do together.
Right.
So maybe that would be a way to move. But right now, yes, we are very divided and not looking good. Not looking.
Doru, you have to think. In your mind and heart, I would expect that you have different feelings about America than the average person. I think that we probably tend to take it for granted. Do you take America for granted? Do you take this country for granted? What do you think? What do you feel?
Well, I'm very grateful that I could live part of my life in America because, I experienced the help of many Americans along the way. I did not live in a vacuum. And I could be, I think, the best that I could be. We all have limitations, and I have mine, and I have reached my limitations, but I did what I could do, which was not possible in Romania at that time. I was absolutely no way. So it'd be just people are not working. The saying was, they pretend to pay us, and we pretend to work.
Wow.
Okay, that was the social contract. And so, now I did a lot of research. That was my job, actually. I did more research than teaching most of my life. And that was enjoyable, to do things. But still, there was no reward of any way. And that was very iffy. If you don't walk the line, then you get a different position. You'll do something else. You
get
go in a factory.
You get to go build a bridge over the dam.
The bridge. Yeah, well, that was the extreme. Yes.
So let me ask you one last question. I appreciate so much you being with us and spending this time. But let's just imagine that tomorrow morning you wake up and you're in charge. They make you president. Now, let me ask you this. Do you feel qualified?
No.
Okay, so let me comment that because you don't feel qualified adds to your qualifications for me, because I don't know that there is anybody who's really fully qualified to do that. And I have a natural distrust of people who can stand up in front of everybody and say, I know exactly what to do, elect me.
Yes.
So, but what would your process?
The first thing I will do, I will spend a good deal of time trying to find the top-notch advisors. I'll look around and see, okay, which is the best general? Somebody like Petraeus or somebody like that. Okay, that's my chief of staff. Who is, the best lawyer? That's the one. Because this is a very complex job. You need to have a lot of knowledge that I don't think any human being has a lot of it. I mean, has all of it.
Right.
And then you have to find all the people that are the best. And then anybody can do the job if you have all the best people around you, So then I may be qualified if I get all these people.
Right. That's what Henry Ford said. Later in his life, there were some people trying to have him declared mentally unfit to run Ford Motor Company. And he was still very confident, and he stood up. He was in the thing talking to a judge, and the judge said, "Mr. Ford, can you explain an internal combustion engine to us?" And he said, "I can't." And they said, "Can you explain the intricacies of your assembly line?" He said, "Not really." And they said, "Can you explain a drivetrain on your best-selling model car?" And he said, "I cannot." And the judge said, "Mr. Ford, what do you know?" And he said, "I know how to get the people in place that know that
That know all of that. Yes, I did not know that, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, buddy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We are.
It was a pleasure.
I think we are I think we're a better place with you here, and I know that there are others like you, and so
this is a country of immigrants, and if you look at the history, those that came here came because they couldn't achieve the best that they could be in the countries they were living, and had the conviction that if they get a chance, they are going to perform, and they had the work ethic attitude. They are going to do whatever it takes so they can do what they need to do. And I think that's the essence of the American immigrant over hundreds of years. Things have changed, unfortunately, because with uncontrolled immigration, we get drugs and we get child abusers, and so. But the system has worked for so long because the people that came here were people that wanted to do something, not just get Social Security and get Medicare for all. They didn't come here for that.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you. Seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Snowshoes for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the Society Against Misnamed Foods. Do you know what you're serving your family to eat? There are government agencies that force suppliers to provide information on calories, fat, sodium levels, and 10 other things, but no one seems to care when the basic food is misrepresented. Protect the dietary process by supporting the Society Against Misnamed Foods. Take peanut butter, for example. What charlatan decided upon that name? Are there peas in it? No. Is a peanut an actual nut? No. Is this butter a dairy product? No. So it's not even butter, is it? No. Here's another. Sweetbreads. Do they taste sweet? No. Are they bread? No. They're brains. That's right, brains. Brains and gravy. All the Society Against Misnamed Foods is asking is that they be called brains. The last time you dined on Rocky Mountain oysters, were you aware that you were eating misnamed food? They aren't Rocky. They don't come from the Rocky Mountains. They aren't even oysters. The Society Against Misnamed Food says call them what they are. They are testicles. Yes, friends, Rocky Mountain oysters are in fact livestock testicles. So please support our cause and buy a ticket to the Society Against Misnamed Foods fundraising banquet in your area. Brains and testicles served in all banquet locations.